encourage them. Okay? Okay, so let's start with a joke. There was a husband who was worried about his wife because he thought she was losing her hearing. So he was at the doctor's, and he said, I don't want to worry her needlessly. What can I do to see if she really lost her hearing? And he said, there's a simple test. Just go to the back of the house, maybe while she's in the kitchen cooking, and ask her a question. And if she doesn't answer, she didn't hear you. Go 10 feet closer, so on. So the man goes home, and he goes back down the hallway, far away from the kitchen, and he says, honey, what's for dinner? In just a natural tone. And she's in the kitchen cooking. And he listens. He doesn't hear anything. So he goes 10 feet closer. Same thing. Honey, what's for dinner? Still, he doesn't hear anything. So he gets real close to the dining room, the third time. Honey, what's for dinner? Nothing. So he goes right outside the kitchen and asks the same question. Still no answer. Frustrated, but thinking it's really true. She can't hear me. He goes right up behind her and says, honey, what's for dinner? And she turns to her husband and says, Ralph, for the 5th time, chicken. So who needed the hearing aid? It wasn't the way the husband thought it was at all. One more, a short one. A young couple, and the husband is saying to his wife, he says, honey, why do you love me? Is it because of my rugged good looks or because of my natural athletic physique? And his young wife looks at him up and down from head to toe and says, it's because of your sense of humor. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that once in a while, we really need a balanced appraisal of things because our own viewpoint isn't necessarily so accurate all the time. We think one thing, maybe it's another. So a reality check is good once in a while to really figure out what's going on here. And so I picked that Bible verse where Jesus said in the book of Matthew, to put things in balance, he said to those people who were criticizing him, he said, take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of your brother's. He was, I think, putting things into balance, but it's kind of humorous. I love this story because you can't really imagine it, can you, that there's a log in someone's eye. But I think what he was trying to say is, you're really seeing things wrong. And to put things back in balance, he told this story so they could see how far off they were. That they needed to look at themselves first in order to understand what's going on with somebody else. So I think Jesus was trying to put things in balance. Do you know, I'm sure you've all heard this story, but I think it's kind of appropriate in this sermon, the story of the man who's walking and he looks back on his life and he sees footsteps behind him, or footprints, and there's always two. Except he notices in the very difficult times of his life, there's only one set of footprints. And he imagines that when it's two, God is walking with him. And when it's only one set of footprints in the difficult time, he thinks he's walking by himself. So he asks God, why? Why did you leave me in those difficult times? And God said, I didn't. When you see one set of footprints, that's mine. I was carrying you. So again, the perspective of how we look at things is so important because we may not at all be seeing things so clearly. We may not be seeing things in the real balance of what they are. You know, it's many years ago now, but at one time, when I was much younger, I was at the seminary, and I read a lot of books. One that I remember so clearly was not a theology book. It was kind of a modern philosophy book. It was called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And a friend recommended it to me. Once I picked it up, it was hard to put it down. But in this story, there's a motorcycle that carries a father and his young son across the country. For a while, there's a couple who are with them, but I think somewhere along the journey, they drop away from the trip. And the father has had some mental difficulties. So it's a struggle for him to take care of his son on this trip. Kind of many times it crosses his mind that he'd be better off without his son. It's too difficult to take care of him. The end of the journey, kind of, the way I recollect it is that he decided he's going to tell his son that he's got to, let him go. Can't take him anymore. And somehow, I don't remember exactly how, but it comes out and becomes clear to him that the son isn't there to be taken care of by him. The son realizes that he's slipping away again into his mental illness and wants to be there to hold on to him, to bring him back, in a sense, to take care of him. So who's carrying who, really? There's many things to think about when we think about these things, but I wanted to talk to you today about balance because we're going into the new year of 2015. And, there's 4 numbers there, 2015. When you add those numbers up, which Reverend Moon was, you remember, so fond of doing, you come up with the number 8. And what does 8 mean? It's the time of a new beginning for us, right? That's kind of what that number means. That's appropriate at this new time, the very first Sunday service of the year. When I think about that number 8, and if you look at it, what really is the number 8? It's 2 zeros, isn't it? 2 circles that are put together. One's on top of the other. That makes the 8. What do those symbolize? To me, when I look at it, you've got heaven above and you've got earth below. You've got from heaven the things that come from on high, inspiration, intuition. And then from down on the earth, you have logic and reason. To me, I feel like in this new year, we really need to combine those things so that they're in balance as we go forward. Also, when we look at that number, 8, if you just tilt it a little bit so that it's on its side, it's still the same. It's 2 circles. But what happens now? What does that represent? 2 circles. Did somebody say it? Infinity, or that which is eternal. Then, when I look at those 2 circles, what I kind of see is, how there's a symbol for a man and there's a symbol for a woman. I don't know how international this is, but they're both circles, right? The man is the circle and there's a little arrow. The woman is a circle, identical, but a little plus sign, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so you have a man and a woman. You put the 2 circles together so they're in contact. You have marriage. You have eternity. You have the many things I feel that in our congregation we need to consider again at the beginning of this year. Because to me, everything needs to be in balance. If it's not in balance, I think, we're kind of going to have difficulties. Whether it's in our marriage or in our church or wherever it might be, in our homes, school, work, we have to have balance. So we absolutely need our spouse, and we absolutely need to be in balance with our partner. That's so important. I don't know if you remember it so well, but in the year 1989, Reverend Moon talked about the settlement of 8 stages. Do you remember? He had been in Alaska, and somehow came kind of to the conclusion of some certain level in his life. So the 8 stages, I want to talk about those for just a minute. Vertically speaking, we're going through 8 stages. We, or mankind, all humanity, starting at the very ground point where after the fall of man, what was there? There was really nothing. There was no light in the world because these original ancestors had lost what they had been blessed with. It says in Genesis 6:6 that it grieved God in his heart that he had made man, and he repented that he did it because he saw how bad the darkness was. So the providence of restoration was to bring light and God's messages to the world so we could change. And we began to get those messages and left that position where we were the servant to the servant. And the servant was the archangel, right? He was the messenger from God, the one who the Bible calls the ministering servant. We became his servant because we followed him. And we went through stages where we became, by our hard work, graduating to the position of a servant in the Old Testament age. The relationship between God and people was master and servant, and there were contracts. And if you do this, I'll do this. And it was very clear. And we graduated from that into the New Testament age, and there was Jesus' message of love. And we were no longer a servant to God, but we were an adopted son through Jesus and the Holy Spirit. Later, we were to become a true son and daughter. There were more stages. We're still involved in that process, but those were the 8 stages. And as well as having those vertically where we're coming back to God, and as well as having many religions that are somewhere along that way, there's at the same time the horizontal stage of 8 stages, where people go from being an individual to having a family, a clan, a tribe, society, nation, world, the cosmos. So there's 8 stages in both directions. My point here is that, again, well, one thing, it's the number 8 that we're talking about today, but also, not just that, that's the course that we go through in restoration. It's good to know where we are and what we need to do next and how we're going to do that, all these kind of things. Each stage that we're in, we start at the bottom. You never go into a new stage and you're at the top. So if you feel sometimes your life has many ups and downs and, you know, you're developing, that's all good, in a way. You know, when that 8 is on its side again, when the 2 circles are next to each other, you're high and you go low as you trace that 8. You come high again and then you go low again. I feel we could have a year where we notice these things, but at the same time, I feel like for us, it's really more of a spiral because we always want to be going up on every level, higher and higher. For Israel, if you look at it in the Bible, it's very much the course of development through 8 stages. Starts out with Abraham, his grandson Jacob becomes Israel, and the nation starts from him with 12 sons, 12 tribes, a society, a nation, etc. Christianity picks up the history of Israel and spreads God's message to the world, the worldwide level, preparing for the second coming, where we can go to the next stage. Yeah. So today, I feel, since it's the first Sunday of the year, I wanted to give a message about being in balance. You know, like those early stories I said in this sermon, we don't really see ourselves so clearly. We don't know, for example, it's not our wife who has trouble hearing, it's myself. Or it's not me that's taking care of somebody else. The reality is they're trying to take care of us. Maybe we don't notice it. So in this year, I feel like we really have to seek balance. with our spouse, with our family, with everyone around us. Balance things and go forward. You know, once when I was young, I was driving a Volkswagen in the mountains. You know those old Bugs? That was my car. I had a nice one, painted red with a white racing stripe on the side. And I was going with someone into the mountains near Yosemite to go prospecting. And it was early spring. We really shouldn't have been on those mountain roads. And there were places where the mud was so deep. But my friend said, don't worry, you know, this is a Volkswagen. They go through amazing, they drive through snow, you know, they'll go through this mud. I couldn't believe how deep the mud was. But it was a long stretch, and he said, I'll drive, and you stay on the back bumper. I said, what am I going to do back there? And he said, well, you're added weight for those wheels in the back with the engine where the power is coming, so you'll help get traction. And kind of casually, he said, like I should already know, if we're going at some direction we don't want to go in, go, I think he said, to the other side of the car and put weight on that corner, and we'll kind of start veering off that way. I didn't know what the heck he was really talking about, but we tried. I see somebody knows what he was talking about. So off we go, and we're plowing through the mud, and there's a boulder that's kind of in the road, this Forest Service road. I don't know what the heck to do. And suddenly, you know, he's yelling at me to do something, and I couldn't hear it in time, and the rear fender, we just didn't clear that boulder in time. The rear fender smashes into it. It was kind of the baptism of my car for prospecting. But I'm saying this story because balance is so critical. You remember the ferry in Korea that was a year ago? They had stacked it with containers incorrectly. What happened? It sunk. So many times, if things aren't in balance, they can't go forward. We really have to consider it in our church, to balance things, in our families, to balance things. So today, though, it being the first Sunday of the month, we also get an opportunity to put our balance into real practice here, now, in the physical world. We're going to be dancing. Michelle and Michael are here with us again. Yeah. And at the end of the announcements, they'll share a little bit with us. But for me, I enjoy the dancing so much. I won't as much today because my wife isn't with me. But I enjoy it so much because, you know, there's the movement, there's the music, and there's that sense of balance that you have to keep. If you keep your balance, things kind of go pretty well. But if you're not noticing kind of the direction that we're moving in or something, you suddenly have to change and get back on track. It's good practice, isn't it? It's very symbolic of the dance of life, the way we need to be living in the world with God and with our brothers and sisters, our neighbor. So through this coming year of 2015, the year that is symbolized by the number 8, there may be highs and lows, and there may be many twists and turns, but I really believe this year can be a wonderful year as we make our best effort to balance ourselves with one another, especially with our spouses. For our children, if there's not balance in the family, it becomes really difficult. And the more the family's out of balance, the more difficult it is for the children. So we really need to do this so that our families remain blessed by God, that the children feel love, that the family can go to the next level of blessing and development. So in this year, brothers and sisters, in this year, go forward and conquer. And as Father said in the words that were read, that were on the screen, heaven is summoning us to be the wise leaders, to set aright this evil world. What does set aright mean? It kind of means something falls down, you pick it up and set it so it was once again the way it was. This is our challenge, to restore things and create the new culture, the new heaven, the new earth. Everything has to be made new by us, and we do that through our family. God bless you and all the families that are here. Have a great year. Thank you very much. Please, let us bow our heads and join together in prayer.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. We sing, holy, holy, holy. I want to see you.
He is the King